Welcome to the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. This is episode 6, Unwritten Rules of Board Game Night. My name is Tyler.
Hello, this is Kevin.
This is Tyson.
All right, so we're just going to go round robin style talking about some of the unwritten rules of Board Game Night.
A lot of times when you go play board games, you say or do something that just doesn't quite jive. Sometimes you make a faux pas and you get that look. Well, that's what this episode is about, right? We're trying to figure out exactly what are some of those unwritten rules for us. I don't think we've ever had a conversation like this explicitly. We've just kind of started jiving and knowing what each other like mostly, but I think there are sometimes still that we do stuff that may be some of our unwritten rules. So I'm excited to kind of talk about some things that we may or may not know about each other.
I mean, I know that I've violated some of my rules before, and now I realize that they're unwritten rules of game night.
I've done the same. I try not to.
Yep.
For sure. I'm more aware of it than I was when I first started board gaming, because some of these drive me absolutely insane, as we'll talk about, right? So why don't I go ahead and get started? So this one I think is probably on everybody's list, and anybody who remotely likes games or is a board gamer, it's on their list too. So, and that is no food or snacks that leave a residue on your fingers.
Yeah.
So, don't come to my game night with Cheetos. That's the biggest offender. Wings.
Yeah.
not that that's ever happened or ever will happen, but don't come to my game night with that kind of stuff.
Go ahead and
right?
get back in your car and leave.
Yeah. You're not welcome. Come with the rack of ribs. You're not welcome either. That kind of thing. So just be careful with the type of snacks that you're going to bring. When I host a game night, it's usually M&Ms. It's chocolate covered almonds. It's something that is board game appropriate, in my opinion.
I mean,
right?
Even cookies are greasy.
Yep, they are. And that makes me cringe a little bit. Plus they have chocolate in them sometimes,
And it's really weird to ask an adult, hey, can you go wash your hands, please? Like that's awkward. Like it is. You shouldn't have to be in that position. I don't know.
Or they take that and instead of washing their hands, they
especially in
lick their fingers
these
off.
Times. I mean, a couple of years ago, okay, maybe, but no, not really.
No.
Never
terrible.
was it okay to
No.
lick your fingers off and then touch my board games with
that's
it.
terrible.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to talk.
That's like when you see someone rub their nose and then they shake your hand a second later.
Gosh.
Like,
or cough into it.
Yeah, just stop.
Some people they don't understand how expensive a lot of these games are. Right. So, we all get it. We've bought games that are very expensive, or we've bought accessories for our games that are very expensive. And when somebody comes in and gets greasy fingerprints all over cards or the board or pieces, it just, kind of grates on you a little bit.
That's probably a common denominator to a fair amount of these unwritten rules is that there's an associated cost with each of these games. And it may be a monetary cost, or it may be some other cost that you've put in your head that there is a degree of value to these games. For me, as a board gamer, as somebody who owns this, I want to be able to play this game. Maybe I'm a board game collector, and so maybe I want to have this game in perpetuity. Like, I want to have this forever and just play it. So like if you're going to do something that is going to jeopardize the ability for me to be able to play with this game at some point in some capacity, not okay.
The worst is games that are out of print.
Yeah.
It's like, oh gosh, I don't know if I want to play this.
Well, and I don't think that makes us super materialistic, right? I mean,
no.
There's no reason why you can't have nice things and keep them nice, especially when you're playing with mostly adults, right? I mean,
so I think that leads into one of my unwritten rules, actually, in that, and you'll see why in a second. I put one of my unwritten rules as people are more important than games. So yes, I think ultimately the game is, you want to keep it nice and pristine and you want to do stuff with it, but if you're doing something to jeopardize a relationship because of the way you're treating your own board game, like to me, that becomes an issue. Or in other instances, I think
now
like,
I feel like a jerk.
Yeah.
No. Like in
I'm not sure. Like, yeah, I agree. But yeah,
in other instances, like if I've invited you to my table, it's because I want to play a game with you, right? It's not like I love games, and yes, I want to play games with whoever. But if you're coming to my table, it's because I want to have this experience with you. And so if I'm inviting you to the table and I invite multiple people to the table and there ends up being like an argument or like some sort of like conflict between them that extends beyond the game experience, like you got to fix that, right? People are more important than the game. So you can't sit there and win at all costs. That's not like the whole deal. I think for me, if I'm not having fun with the people around the table, I've lost the point of what the game is supposed to do.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the relationships you have are more important. Obviously, people are going to be more important than cardboard. Sometimes we get really attached to cardboard, though, and it's tough to see through that. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's about your relationships, and you never want to do anything that will jeopardize that.
absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, is it really that strong of a relationship if you ask somebody, "Hey, please don't bend that card," and they lose their mind, and you know it?
Absolutely.
I mean, do you want to continue to be friends with that person? Like, you know, someone that doesn't respect your stuff or
But I think that goes back to the whole point of if I'm inviting you to my table, it's because I want you at my table.
Absolutely.
Right? But if you do something that is like you're
you flip my table, like,
absolutely.
Okay, well,
you can't respect my interest in my personal stuff.
It comes down to, are they maliciously doing it or is it an accident?
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
So if it's an accident, it happens. You ruined my game. It sucks, but it happens. I'm not going to jeopardize my relationship with you. If somebody comes with a marker and just draws all over my scythe board, I have an issue with that. And that person's probably not my friend. You know, like to your point, Tyler, it's like,
there's a line there somewhere.
Yeah, there's a line there and you crossed it and you probably aren't welcome at my house anymore. So I think it's all about intent.
Exactly. Like if you're doing something that either doesn't respect the people or my house, my games, my stuff, my family, whatever. Yeah, I think there's plenty of reasons to draw that line.
One of the unwritten rules of game night that came up in my mind is you better play to win the game. Whether you are in it, whether you're not, whether you're bored, whether you're on the edge of your seat, play to win the game. Because if you start throwing the game or start king making or not playing for your self-interest, it ruins the game for other people. And it's, there's nothing can kill a game more than when you're playing and halfway through it, someone's like, "Oh, I hate this." And, the rest of the game, they're just pouting or whatever. And they're not playing to win. Even though they might not have a chance of winning, they're not playing to get their best score or whatever. That drives me nuts. It doesn't happen a lot, but every once in a while it does happen. And it just ruins the experience for everybody, especially if someone's having a great game. That's one that came up to mind. Do you guys agree?
Agree with that.
Okay.
So as you're talking about that, I played a game of Bang the Dice Game. And for those that don't know, it's a hidden role game. You only know the sheriff. There's deputies, there's outlaws, there's a renegade, right? We were playing the game, and the people I was playing with would just randomly attack everybody. And they did that just because they wanted to attack people. They weren't trying to figure out who was who. They weren't trying to do anything that the game wanted them to do. They're just attacking people randomly. Yeah. I'm like, oh, you're not, like you said, you're not playing the game as it was intended. It's ruining it for everybody else. It's not a fun experience except for maybe you, because you're doing something that bugs everybody. I don't know. Yeah, it just ruins it. And it makes it not fun for pretty much everybody.
Well, and I've had games before where someone got upset and then their whole goal the rest of the game was to be spiteful and to
take it out on that person.
Yes, and
I agree. This one was on my list as well. I don't ruin games for others. Play to win. That was my whole thought as well, because there have been a number of times. Kevin, you just talked about an experience that you had. I've had that experience with like King of Tokyo, right? Where somebody will be rolling and they're about to get killed or whatever, and then they're like, well, I'm not going to do the optimal play. I'm going to roll. I'm going to take all the numbers in different order. So I'm going to take a 1, a 2, and a 3, and then I'm not going to do anything to attack this person because I want them to win. Or the worst experience I think I had with that was I was playing the Resistance, and it was with a group of people I didn't know, and there was a couple playing. Couples can drive me nuts when they don't have individual interests in games. And in this game particularly, I was the bad guy. And I was the spy, and they were trying to figure it out. And this was a huge game of like 10 people. And so I had basically eliminated everybody but this couple, because they would refuse to vote for one another, and they would refuse to do anything. And I was just like, that's not even a point of the game. Like, there's no basis for you to trust one another. And even though they were right, like
you can't be mean to your wife.
Keep your relationship
or your spouse or whoever.
Keep your relationships out of gaming, right?
There's one exception for me. My dad always lets my mom win, and it's just kind of cute. And there, it's a little bit different. Or he does things that, he just doesn't want to be overly mean to her. I don't play a lot of games with both of them, but, I don't get too upset about that.
Yeah, that's cool.
In general, though, I totally agree. Next one on my list is listen to the rules explanation.
What are you saying?
So for most of my gaming life, I've been kind of the one who buys the games, the one who learns the games, and then teaches them. And there's very little in board gaming that annoys me more than people, on their phones or doing something else and not listening to the rules explanation. A lot of these games that we play are really heavy and involved. We talked about Imperial Steam in our last episode. I mean, how long did that take you to learn that game?
It was a few hours for sure.
Yeah. And a lot of times.
And a playthrough.
You're doing a playthrough, you're reading through the rules a few times. Sometimes you're even watching instructional videos online of how to play it. You're investing a lot of time to teach a lot of these games. And then you get to the table and they're not listening. It's like, no, listen. And then what even drives me more crazy is later on in the game, somebody gets mad because they play a rule wrong that you had explained earlier, and they just missed it.
Or, you didn't teach me that.
Yeah, you didn't teach me that rule.
Confrontational, and
it's like, whoa.
But it's awesome in those moments when someone else pipes up.
Defense.
Like, yeah, actually, he did.
In our group, I've noticed that we've done that really well for each other, because we understand that investment of time of the rules and say, no, that was taught. But
even if it wasn't taught and you mess up a little rule, don't get mad at that. Right?
Particularly if you're not listening to the rules.
Sometimes it's a 20-page rule book, and if you do something wrong or you teach something wrong, it's fine. Get over it.
Yeah.
We'll do it right the next time. Don't get mad,
I'd be lying if I said that I 100% listened to every rule teach completely.
I agree.
There are times where, the other night when by the time we got to Iberian Gauge, like I listened, but the strategy, it just wasn't linking in my brain. And I listened, but my brain was done at that point. So...
Well, so yeah, I've had that experience as well. What I tend to do for myself when that happens is, unless, like, if it's past the time to ask questions about the game, I'll be like, okay, I'm just going to suffer through this. This is my own fault. I didn't listen carefully enough. I'll figure this out.
Well, and that's why I just copied what Kevin was doing. And then we ended up with the same score at the end of the game.
But if you're allowed to ask rules, that's fine. Like,
well, you're always allowed to ask questions.
If you ask questions, if it's not past that time to ask questions, because for me, I think there is a time to ask questions in rules, right?
Yeah.
Like the time to ask a question is not necessarily right after he says or she says, and then we'll have this part of the board where you'll be able to do this type of a thing. And then they say, somebody immediately pipes up and goes, wait, so can you do this over there? Like, I haven't explained that part of the board yet. Like, let me.
And it might be a part that I'm coming back to in a minute when it makes sense to come back to it.
Which is, I've found that when I'm teaching a game, I have to, especially with certain people, like in family or like in like other game groups, I've found that I have to say, I'm not explaining this part yet for a specific reason. I will get back to it. It will make more sense if first I explain this part of the game. So like I have to go through that. So for me, it's wait till the appropriate time to ask a question. But that's all part of, are you listening to the rules correctly?
That also goes into another rule that I thought of. If someone's teaching a game and you know the game really well too, don't interject. And I've done this before. I know I've done it to Kevin before.
I've done it. I did it 2 nights ago.
I mean, like, it throws off whatever flow that they have going. If you have something that you keep, that you notice that they missed, come back to it when it makes sense or when they're done teaching. When you interject, sometimes you can do it smoothly at times, I think, without throwing the person off. But a lot of times when you interject and say, oh, yeah, well, actually this, and no, that's not the direction I was going. I'm going this path, and then I'll come back. Reason. Yeah, and then I'll come back to...
I've been guilty of that, for sure.
I think we all have.
Yeah.
Because we also understand pitfalls in games that occur, and so you want to ensure, I've made this mistake before. I want other people to realize, don't make this mistake in this game. So it's easy to make that, but I have that down as well. If you're not the teacher, don't teach. Though the other night we were playing Galaxy Trucker, and Dan was teaching the game. He brought the game and he was teaching the game, and he was not as fresh on the rules, and neither was I. I had played it before. And he wasn't as fresh on the rules. So he specifically went, Tyson, is this how you do this one? And reached out to me, at which point I felt comfortable being like, we actually need to do this, this, and this, and like help out with kind of the rules teach to a degree. But then there is a point, I think, where you have to bow out. Because I realized later, I was like, I'm taking over the teaching, and that's not what I want to do. I want them to teach the rest.
A lot of times when I teach, I don't know if you guys do this, but I make a conscious effort to think about how I'm going to teach the game. And then, does this make sense? It may not be exactly how the rules go through it, right? But I think about that, and I want it to be a good experience for everybody. So I have a purpose to how I'm going about it. And to your point, Tyson or Tyler, it's if somebody kind of jumps in and throws that off, then it's,
it derails you.
It can throw you off a little bit, right? Because you know how you want to do it, and you know what makes sense to you and what you think is going to make sense to everybody else, and it just kind of throws you off.
I think if you are teaching a complex game and you don't go through how you're going to, you don't go through that ahead of time, what's the best way for me to explain this game? It turns out bad. And I've had that experience teaching games even in the last year. I've felt like when I taught Dwellings of Eldervale, it was a train wreck, and I could have planned out better how to teach it to begin with. I don't know.
Well, and that makes sense because I think that there is a flow to how you teach a game, right? And Kevin, you mentioned it. Sometimes teaching the rule book the way that it's laid out is not the optimal way to teach somebody at the table. And I think part of that can be either the rule book's written poorly, but I think more often than not, the rule book is written in a way that you can learn the game from the rules by reading it, as opposed to teaching a game to somebody at the table is different than reading and learning about a game. So like there are different ways to learn the game, and there's different learning styles. So you may need to cater to those factors.
Like for me, I almost always start out with, this is how you win the game.
Right.
Then everybody knows the goal, and then you go through how to play the game. So I don't know. I think there's a skill to teaching games, and you get better the more you do it.
And every once in a while you strike out.
And every once in a while, I think we've all been there. Every once in a while you fall flat on your face, and hopefully it's still a good experience for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, and particularly if you're learning the game as well, you haven't played the game and you're teaching a new game, that can be rough in and of itself. Like, you think you understand the game, you've watched your videos, you've read the rules, you've maybe played a few turns, but like until you get down into it with certain games and that interaction, sometimes doing that could be hard. So having compassion to the rules teacher is I think important, so that you know that that's not an easy task. That's a big responsibility for them to do.
Yeah. And another thing, an unwritten rule of game night is treat my games nice, please. Don't bend my cards.
Oh, dude.
That's on mine.
It's on my list too.
So part of treating my games nice is food, obviously. Don't bring greasy fingers. But also when we're playing the game, don't bend the cards. Don't put cards by your mouth.
That drives me crazy.
Or any game component by your mouth.
I mean,
Tyler's going to argue.
Well, okay. We're getting there. That's another unwritten rule again. We'll go there now. Don't eat my game pieces.
Whatever, dude.
That is another.
You eat at McDonald's. That's halfway to plastic.
Well, that's true. That is true. No, I think that rule only applies to Tyler, but if there's any other listeners out there that have had friends that have eaten their game, let us know, because we'd be very interested to hear about that. That would be entertaining for us.
What if it's an apocalyptic situation? I mean, there could be some...
You need to eat the game to survive?
I mean, we all get hungry.
Right? And
you're starving.
Better options out there that you could forage for than your board game.
Than the toxins that are in board games.
What if it's nuclear waste outside and you've eaten your...
I think you got other problems going on.
This is a little bit of a stretch, but Tyler,
you've resorted to a goat-like mentality.
During the apocalypse, you are welcome at my home to eat my games. We're that good of friends.
Oh my gosh.
Until then, keep them out of your mouth.
Right. All right. Yeah. So, I mean,
going back to the don't bend the cards though.
Literally,
like if you're playing a trick-taking game, a game where you're playing cards down on the table, there are about 30 different ways to hold a card and set it down on the table without bending the corner. Someone puts the card down and they're holding the corner, and then and all of their cards are bent, and it's like you almost want to call them on it, but
I have called people on it, and I feel as bad calling them on it, but I'm like,
I know, because you understand it's just a game.
Yeah.
Right. Goes back to what we were saying before.
That people are important, yes, but also don't bend my cards.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I can let it go. Like if it's Quiddler, okay, fine. I don't care if you bent. These cards have been played so many times over the last 15 years. Like whatever, they're already kind of trash. But if it's a nice game, it takes half a second of effort and thought to not bend the card when you put it down.
Yeah, and I don't care if it makes a cool noise when you go or something, right?
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned it, Kevin. I think one step worse than that, and this has been multiple people. It's not just like there's one person in my life that has done this. I have had multiple people that have taken game components, cards, player boards, whatever they are, and put them near their mouths. And I've even have somebody put them in their mouth, like bite with their lips.
That's not Tyler?
That's not Tyler. And I'm like, why is that okay? I've had to ask them to stop.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
And they continue to do it because it's some sort of nervous habit. And I understand that that's a nervous tick sometimes, or it's your tell or whatever it might be. But don't put your game components near or in your mouth.
Yeah.
Really don't do anything that someone has to create a confrontation around, right?
They may not realize it though, right?
I guess.
I don't know. It's tough, and it's kind of an awkward thing to bring it up.
Yeah.
Even though it should be obvious, it's a weird situation to be in, right?
Well, and when something is perceived as inherently obvious to you that you shouldn't be doing that. An unwritten rule, right? Like it's unwritten because it should be fairly apparent to most people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't think you should have to tell somebody. When you actually have to tell somebody an unwritten rule, it's like, do I really need to be telling somebody this? Like this is an awkward situation because I feel like you should know this.
We are pretty deep into the board game culture here.
We are.
So maybe it's obvious for us and not obvious.
But some of them are just normal. I mean, even if we're not talking about board games, like treat my stuff nice.
Right.
It's not that hard. I treat your stuff nice. Please treat my stuff nice.
Well, I think in most of the world, having missing game pieces in trash games is the norm.
It's common, yeah.
It's common. So I've posted my collection on Facebook, for example, and I've gotten comments like, wow, are you not missing half your game pieces for all your games, right? Like, that's how it is at my house. And then there's other comments on people that know me that say, well, if you knew Kevin, you would realize that that's a no-no, right?
Yeah.
That he takes care of his games.
I'm sorry, my kids aren't allowed to throw my games around and mix them up. And,
well, if you look at like any Monopoly in a garage sale or on a Facebook market post, it'll
have
partially
Stratego
complete,
pieces.
right? Exactly, it has Stratego pieces in it.
Right.
You mix and match. The thimble's not there or whatever else. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that it is partially that we are part of a board game culture that understands some of these. But I think there's some that are potentially more obvious. And similar to the don't bend the cards, I have one that I feel is relatively obvious, but I've come to find out that it's not so obvious. Shuffling cards, right? There are certain ways to shuffle board game cards. This is not a poker deck that you're going to get a brand new poker deck for every single game you play. This is a board game. And in a board game, don't bridge shuffle my cards. Don't bend them by bridge shuffling my cards. Side shuffle is preferred, but not everybody can side shuffle.
No.
So
I do the side shuffle, right? And people look at me like, I can't do that.
how do you do that?
How am I supposed to shuffle your cards? I agree with you, but there are certain games where I'm okay with the bridge shuffle. And it's mainly like less expensive card games.
Party games.
No Thanks is one.
We're playing the Crew Deep Sea Mission. I was bridge shuffling. I'm okay with that, right?
I agree.
But if it's a game that is a more expensive game, I'm completely on board with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's one of the main reasons, and I know you're not a big fan of this, but I sleeve almost all of my cards.
Yeah, but part of
as
that
do I.
problem.
And you cannot bridge shuffle sleeve cards
Fly
because they go everywhere. They get slippery and it's like, bro, it's just a disaster.
Yeah.
So you can just
It deters the bridge shuffle.
It does, and that's one of the reasons why I do it. Not only does it keep the cards nice for longer, but it forces people to do a different method of shuffling. You can just cut the deck and just kind of push them together, and it works perfectly. Anybody can do that, But I agree with you for the most part on the bridge shuffle.
All right, so one of the rules that I have is unless the game expressly allows or encourages it, no cheating. It's so annoying. Just because you might think you're getting away with it, just because you think you might be clever, doesn't mean that nobody is noticing. They just might not want to call you out on it because it's confrontational, right? But I just don't understand what the motivation is to ever.
What enjoyment do you actually get out of
Yeah,
that?
like, oh, I won. Okay,
Did
great.
you really? With a
Bill
caveat?
Belichick. Like, come on. Like, I don't understand that. Like, if you feel, I don't know, maybe I can understand it if like you're in a game and you just feel you're just not that confident in that game and you don't want to look stupid. Like, okay, you cheat a little to bring up your score a little bit. But even then, like, it just, I don't understand it. You play the game to have fun. When cheating happens, it just ruins a game, whether you get called out on it or not. It's just, I've never understood, growing up as a kid, like I don't remember actively cheating in games. I remember playing with other kids that did, and it was like, it's stupid. I just don't get it. I don't know.
No, I meant that was on my list. Don't cheat. I had a brother growing up. He cheated, and everybody was like, "Oh, you just cheated when thought it was funny to do so. It drove me crazy. But I have a few games where you mentioned, Tyler, that unless the game specifically allows it, don't do it, right? Well, I have a game that allows it. World Championship Russian Roulette. This is a social bluffing game with some social deduction element, but not really. And cheating, in air quotes, is allowed. But there are parameters within the game in which it is allowed. Every time I teach this game, I have to put in the caveat that there is cheating in this game, but only in a specific way. And then I proceed to say, this is how it is. And I said, don't cheat. It'll make me super upset. Like don't really cheat. Cheat like this, and it'll ruin the game for everybody. Well, I did that, and I taught it to somebody once, and they deliberately cheated, and then I thought they had legitimately won, and it was down to me and them to win. And I didn't care about winning necessarily. I wanted a good, fun experience. He cheated and won the game, and then immediately after, I was like, that was awesome. Well played. That was really good. And he goes, you want to know how I won? I cheated. Ugh. And I was like, why would you even tell me that? I'd rather you cheat and not tell me.
Just be quiet about it.
Right. It drove me crazy. And I was like, that is enough to make me never want to play a game with you again.
Yeah, that's annoying.
It's fun when it's within the parameters of the game.
Right.
We played We're Doomed, which you get event cards, collaborative, semi-cooperative game. You're trying to secure a seat on a rocket before the world gets blown up, right? I had a card one time that it was cheat until someone calls you on it. And it was awesome. Right. And I was just taking handfuls of resource tokens. And finally, eventually, someone called me on it. And I was like, oh, and I revealed the card. And then I couldn't cheat. But by that time, I had added so many things to the box, to the pool of resources that everybody was secured in the win. It was fun. It's fun when it's within the rules of the game.
Yeah. This was so obvious to me that it didn't even make my list.
Yeah, right.
Right? It probably should have, but it didn't even make my list. There is a person that I played games with in the past that we have kind of caught him cheating before. And I'm like, it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
And there are certain games that we would not play with this individual because of that. Roll for the Galaxy comes to mind.
Anything that's hidden.
You are doing everything behind a screen.
Oh, yeah.
And we couldn't trust that person to not just flip the dice to what they wanted them to be. And it's like, really? This is, I just don't understand why this is even a thing, So I agree with that. It's just don't do it. Play the game. Just have fun.
So on the other side, I do have something that kind of feels like it's on the other side of the fence of that. One of them being my unwritten rule is it's not personal, it's the game. Now, this specifically applies, I think, in social deduction games. So let me give you an example. I played a social deduction game. I believe it was The Resistance. I know I've already mentioned that one, but I think this was The Resistance, and I was playing it with my best friend from high school, my younger brother, my best friend's wife, and sister-in-law. And we were all playing this game. So we all knew each other pretty well and had good understanding of what was impactful to somebody. Well, in this game, I had to find a way to make my own brother believe me when I was lying. And I knew that my brother understood that I don't often get angry. It takes a lot to get me angry. So I had to find a way to convince him that he had done something to make me angry. Well, I snuck myself in a way to make him accuse me of cheating. And as we just discussed, cheating is a problem for me. So I pretended to get really upset about that so that I could win this game and flip it on his head. Now, the other person in that group was the sister-in-law. She loves her cat. she did a similar thing to her own sister by saying that she swore on her cat's life, which is something that supposedly she would never do if she was telling the truth. Well, she was lying. So in that game, we both did stuff that was like out of the normal, but within the parameters of the game. And so we had done something, and it ended up when the game ended and we left the game, we were like, oh no, we weren't upset, and no, she didn't swear on her cat's life or whatever. And it didn't leave the game because everybody at that table could understand that, oh, that was all part of the game and it was part of the fun, which allowed for this really fun experience and this really memorable experience to see that, oh, you did so well at making us understand your perspective that it made it really good. So it's not personal, it's the game. But I think you can take that over the top sometimes. But for the most part, I would say that if I'm playing a game, particularly a social deduction game, and it's allowed within the rules, don't take things personally.
Your blood can begin to boil at times, though, in certain games. I think we've all been there where maybe you're just having an off night or something, and you just kind of feel it coming on. You maybe feel like you're being attacked or something. So it is important that you don't take that from game to game. You just leave it at the table if you can.
Here's an obvious one: basic hygiene, shower, deodorant, maybe brush your teeth.
I'd rather you be 10, 15 minutes late coming to board game night because you had to shower than come to board game night smelling.
Is that why you've been late?
That's there are other reasons.
Yeah, there has been a string of tardiness of late.
Yeah.
So funny story going along with hygiene. So I decided to take my daughter to the game shop sometime last year, and it happened to be Friday night. And I don't know if you guys, yeah, there you go, Friday Night Magic. So we walk into the local game shop, and immediately opening the door, it's almost like you were knocked over by the smell. I could not believe it. It was so bad. And my daughter noticed it right away. It was almost to the point where you had to plug your nose. And we went in there, got the game we were looking for, and went out pretty quick. But it just blows me away that and it's kind of a thing among some board gamers. It's just there's not quite self-aware enough to know that that could be a little bit off-putting.
I've had that experience multiple times at different shops. I've come to the conclusion that one of the best reasons to make a hybrid store with food and board games, like a coffee shop, board game shop, is to counteract that smell at times.
That is interesting. I used to run a game group at a coffee shop in Salt Lake, and never had that problem. Even though there were some members that came that were a little stinky. Yeah. The coffee smell was much better than the BO smell.
Okay.
So.
I mean, even on Saturday night when I had a big game night, we had 11 or 12 people come. There was no egregious violations of this, but we're all down in my basement on a couple different tables. And after a while, it gets a little pungent down here, even with, no big violations of this.
Well, and it was warm, right? Like it was particular. I noticed how warm it was down here. And
I noticed one of the vents was open down here, and usually we don't have them open down here.
And so I was like, oh, it's warm. But I didn't it didn't get to Kevin's Friday Night Magic the Gathering night example of smell. It
didn't. But I went upstairs to grab some water, and I came back down, opened up the door to come back down the stairs, and I was like, "Whoa, okay, that's a little ripe down here,
pungent, stings the nostrils." My next one, it's already been briefly mentioned, and that's if at all possible, show up on time, right? A lot of times we have, at least for our game nights, we have everything set up, ready to go. We may have a game on the top. We may have a game in the vault. We know what we're going to play for that night. If there's 5 people playing the game and 4 of them show up and the other one's like a half hour late, it kind of throws a wrench in those plans that you have for the night. And I completely understand that sometimes life just gets in the way. Yeah. Maybe you get caught up at work, and there's really nothing you can do about it. But if at all possible, try to be there when you say you're going to be there.
This is a big deal to me. it's less of a deal to people I live with. so
yeah.
it's hard sometimes to do that. What I've found is if I'm going to be late and I know I'm going to be late, first send a text message
Absolutely
beforehand. Like
rule
let
number
them
one
know
in all
you're going to be
ways
late.
of life.
Right.
If you're going to be late, send a message.
Right. Let
Not
people
just
know.
at board game night.
You notify the people that you're going to be late because it's a lot better to know that they're going to be late and how late you're going to be, right? My other rule has become attempt to learn the game before game night if I don't already know. That way I can say, get started on rules because I've already learned the rules. I'll just come in as I can. And that helps. But ultimately, I don't think it mitigates entirely the whole.
Yeah, that happened the other night with Imperial Steam. You said, hey, I'm going to be late. I've already, I feel like I've got a good base on the rules. Go ahead and get started without me. And, it worked out great.
So, so notifying if you're going to be late is great. I mean, that's at a minimum, that's what you should do for sure. But again, life gets in the way. Not that big of a deal. As far as unwritten rules, it's pretty low on the list. But but it's just something that can be a minor annoyance.
Well, but if it's repeated,
right,
and it's
every time
and not notified every time, then okay. I mean, how do I know if you're even still showing up? Right? I don't know.
Yep.
So we've kind of touched on this one, but I wanted to kind of highlight this part specifically. One of my unwritten rules is finish the game. If you start a game, you finish the game.
Yeah.
I have had multiple experiences where somebody will get up in a game and say, hey, I gotta go.
No, you don't.
No, right, exactly.
So I think there's one caveat to that, though.
I know what you're going to say.
Okay.
Or I think I know what you're going to say.
This happened the other night. We were playing Shadows over Camelot. One of the guys, before we started playing, said, hey, I need to be out of here at 9:30, which was 2.5 hours away or something. I think it's okay at that point.
I would agree. So
give or take the situation.
So if you set the precedence ahead of time that, hey, I'm not going to be able to likely finish this game, so either I'll leave now or
sure,
are you guys okay with me leaving? That's fine. But like if you sat down to this table and the expectation was we're going to play this game and we're going to play the whole thing, and then in the middle of it with like no warning, because I've had this happen where somebody's just like, I think I'm done.
Right. This just isn't as fun as I thought it was going to be.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's similar to the one earlier that we were talking about where play to win, right? Or play the game, right? Yep. Like if you're not going to do your best at this game, why? Yeah.
Just why chit chat. You can sit off to the side and chit chat while we play.
Exactly.
Yep. Prime example, we've talked about this in the podcast already.
Episode 4, Cabin Con.
Gorus Maximus was not the best play, I guess, that we've had together. And we were tempted to, we had talked about just ending the game, right? And
this is what the caveat I thought would be.
Yeah, but we as a group said, no, we're gonna finish the game, play it out. And I'm glad we did, right?
So my whole life, I've been like, you start the game, you finish the game. I thought about this after the discussion in Cabin Con is, if everybody at the table really is not having fun and everybody agrees not to finish the game, then I guess I'm okay with it. I've never had that experience before in a game. Somebody was always having fun. Not to say that Gorus Maximus is a terrible game, but it just didn't hit our group in stride. I mean, we just didn't hit it in stride, and it was a rough play, right?
So I have had that happen in playing Arkham Horror. Now, there were a couple of reasons why it happened. We all started playing it. Nobody had played it beforehand. This was a time when we all decided, hey, we're going to learn the game on the fly. Nobody had prepared beforehand, which is a terrible idea. Don't ever do that. Learn the games ahead of time. Anyway. But we decided to learn it on the fly. So we started playing. We get Arkham Horror is a long, long game, and we didn't have the full understanding of what we were getting ourselves into. And because we didn't have a good understanding of the rules, people weren't having a great time. And so everybody was like, can we play something else that we know and enjoy? Like that's not going to take another 3 hours. And it wasn't that Arkham Horror was a bad game. It was just at that time, everybody was not having a great time with it. And if we had come back and had learned the rules, I'm sure we would have had a great time with it. But for that experience, we decided, hey, we're going to all stop playing this game. And that was great. But I think that more likely you get a situation like we had with Gorus Maximus, where it may appear that everybody's not enjoying it, and then you have that conversation. Yeah. And then if somebody is still enjoying that game, you finish that game.
I guess there's also the possibility too, where you're playing a new game and you realize that an hour ago your whole table had been misplaying a crucial rule, yep. And there's no undoing it. There's no real reason to finish it out.
It really completely changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah, I think at that point it's okay to say, okay, well, at least we learned from this experience. Now we can play it the next time, knowing the rules. Let's reset it right now and start playing. So I don't know.
I can't imagine learning Arkham Horror.
Don't.
Like that.
On the fly? No. Ugh. It is a terrible idea.
I played that game. I played that game one time, and it was about 15 years ago. So you guys have heard of the SaltCon convention, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Before it was called SaltCon, it was called a Gathering of Friends, and it was up at the University of Utah campus. And it was really small at that time. And my wife and I went there. We sat down at Arkham Horror, and it was a long game, and I think there's people around the table that knew how to play, but it was not a good experience for us at all. And I can't imagine, I can't imagine a bunch of newbies trying to figure that one out.
I mean, honestly, if it's not a filler game, don't ever try playing it learning it on the fly. And even filler games sometimes are a little brutal to learn on the fly.
Especially if you're not invested in it. Like, especially if it's like the closing the night game and you're like, okay, let's play one last game. How about we learn this? You're kind of exhausted. It's like, if you're heart's not into learning a game,
it can be a little rough.
That night you taught Russian roulette, I was so tired. And we started playing at like midnight.
Yeah,
I was so done. I had fun playing it, but it took me a round or two of playing before I really understood what was going on.
Except for one of our friends was enthusiastic about playing the game, and I was like,
Logan asked me every big game night like that, like, hey, are we going to play Russian roulette?
Have I played that one?
No.
I don't think I have, right?
Because it has a lot of great stuff, but like I said earlier, it has the potential to cheat, so don't cheat, Kevin.
But it fits right in there.
I'm out. I can't promise that.
It fits right in there with Spicy, with Skull, with Cockroach Poker.
Yep.
I mean, very similar weight and experience. And
cool.
Good time.
Yep.
But we're not reviewing games in this episode. We're talking about rules.
Boy, we get derailed.
Because we're uptight.
We are.
I mean, we kind of sound uptight after all these rules, don't we? A little bit?
Yeah, we kind of sound like board game snobs.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, to a certain extent, we kind of are. Do you guys loan out your games ever?
Yeah, I just brought one over tonight, actually.
But to a fellow gamer.
Right. Exactly.
Right. I loaned out Carcassonne like 10 years ago. That's about it.
See, and that's the thing is, so I've loaned games out a number of times. I've loaned games out to people who don't return the games.
Well, that's an unwritten rule of board games.
For
right return the game.
And I'm at a point where I want to play that game again, and I need to go.
It's not me, is it?
It's not you.
Oh, okay.
It's nobody at this table.
It's you.
It's definitely Tyler.
I'm like, I've never even.
But so I've loaned games out. So I've loaned games out to people who haven't.
Not adrenaline.
This happens to me
every time. Yeah, so, but you never got it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've loaned games out before and never gotten them back. But part of it is like when I loan a game out, it's because I think somebody's going to enjoy this game and I want them to have that experience. So the game I loaned to Tyler, or Tyler's wife, Shelly, is Final Girl because I think she will really enjoy that experience. And this one in particular is a solo game. So like it's not one that I could come and play with her and teach her it. So it's a little different in that regard.
And you know that she's going to, take care of the game and not eat the cards or.
Well, it's not Tyler, so it's fine.
She's a step above me in everything. So yeah, I mean,
so you could
she's not going to eat the components.
You can feel assured that you're going to
get it. It was one time.
Well, there's certain games like the unlock games.
Right. I was going to mention
it's a one and done. It's a deck of cards. Absolutely. I'm going to give that game to somebody else so they can experience that if they want to experience
Detective
that.
Season 1 is the same way for me. Yeah. I've completed that one. I'm never going to play it again, but I really enjoyed it and would love somebody else to have an experience with that.
But I would love to dish off Star Wars Unlock here in a little bit as soon as we finish it. But
we should just have a trade of games we've played that we've finished.
We should do it.
That everybody should try.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you've had some bad experiences in the past.
Yeah. So people know me as the board game guy, right? I got, huge collection of games. So I've had people say, hey, can I borrow some games? And, reluctantly I've said yes in the past. And you get that game back and there's food on it and crushed box corners and
missing pieces
and stuff. And it's just, I usually don't loan out games now, unless it's to somebody that, I know is going to treat those games
What's the
like
longest?
I would treat those games.
I feel like if I borrowed one of your games and I did something that like I bent a player board or cracked it or lost a piece, I would just replace it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd buy a new game. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd keep your old version.
I would keep that copy and apologize profusely. And by the way, there's one in the mail that's coming that's for you to replace it.
It's funny. We were back in Salt Lake for Thanksgiving playing games with my family, and they have a dog that is about a year old or something like that at that time, and one of the cards fell off the table. And we're like, where'd the card go? And we look down and the dog's just chomping on it. I'm like, ah! And my brother-in-law knows, he kind of feels the same way about games as I do. And you treat him like, you're going to keep him forever type of thing. And he's like, well, looks like we're buying you a new game. So a few days later, one came in the mail and they had a brand new game that had a chewed up card, right?
A copy of the game that was mostly new.
Yeah, it was, and really that one card didn't ruin the game. It was just one of the variable setup options. But he bought a new one, and that's exactly what I would have done in that case if my dog ate a game piece.
So I'm curious, what's the longest somebody has held on to one of your games that they borrowed?
I had to start following up after probably 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, I've had that.
I'm at 2 years.
2 years.
What game
2
is
years.
You win.
Arkham Horror, the card game.
What? You don't have that one?
I have it. I don't have it.
I thought you actually had it in your possession.
Oh, so Kevin and I, if we wanted to start playing it,
I would go get it immediately.
Because I would love to start playing through that campaign.
I've already started dropping hints, but the hints don't seem to be working.
Oh my gosh. Well, you win.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time for sure.
But it's okay because
really
I know they've played it and they enjoy it. So that's important to me as well. It's not like But at that point, buy me a new copy or buy yourself your copy and give me my game back, right?
Yeah, you like the game enough and you're going to play it enough like that, then you probably need your own copy.
Time to invest, right? So I think the last one that I'll mention that I think is pretty obvious if you play games a lot is don't use your phone. Don't be on your phone if you're playing a board game. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule occasionally. Obviously, if your wife is pregnant, if there is some emergency situation, if there's whatever going on, like I'm not saying don't have your phone in sight, but don't be in your phone and then somebody's like, hey, it's your turn, right? Like that drives me crazy. I also think that there's exceptions in the fact that we're seeing more and more board games now with apps implemented into them. So obviously you have to use your devices for that, but that's
an exception.
That's a different, like that's a different situation altogether. But yeah, if somebody has to remind you that it's your turn because you're on your phone, that drives me crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I usually don't even get text messages or anything until the end of game night. And my wife kind of realizes that at this point. So I probably should be looking at my phone a little bit more, but
I check it periodically, but I try to not be on my phone. I know this is one that I'm sure I've crossed a couple times. It happens.
I don't think
I agree though. I mean,
it's more of the repeated thing. So like if it's happening a lot, that's a problem. Like if you're disinterested or not invested in the game experience because you're doing something on your phone, particularly if you're just like browsing a social media platform and stuff like that, that's really what drives me crazy. If you get a text from your wife, by all means, respond to your wife. Like,
absolutely.
Like for me, that's like I would do the same thing, and I have done that. Like she'll text me and be like, "Hey, where's the what such and such?" Right? Like looking for something, and of course I'm going to respond to that. But it's not going to necessarily detract me from the game experience at large.
Yeah, quit playing Angry Birds and play the game. Dang it!
Yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So actually, that tied into really one of, I guess, my last rule was be ready to play on your turn. Pay attention. Know when it's your turn. Plan ahead if the game allows it. Try to help the flow of the game move along, right? Be ready. Be thinking. You know, it's okay to chat and have fun. I mean, we have talked in the past about how some of our plays are a little bit longer because we're telling stories or we're having a good
podcast.
We're having a good time though, but at the same time, there are times where it's just like, okay, dude, it's your turn again, and it's been a minute and you still don't realize it's your turn, and I'm tired of reminding you it's your turn over and over and over and over again, right?
Yep.
And I'm not saying that that's happening at this table or in our group, but
Tyson,
just be ready to play and think ahead. And, your plans don't always pan out. Somebody does something on their turn that affects what you were going to do. You have to adjust. I get that, but be ready to play.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah. You guys agree with that one?
I concur.
Okay.
I concur.
I have one more small one. Just have fun. Board games are fun.
That's a dumb rule.
Right.
You're a dumb rule.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about, we do sound like board game snobs, but at the end of the day,
avoid quarterbacking.
Oh, another one.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were at fun. Now
I thought we were fun.
Avoid quarterbacking.
And above all, have fun.
Yes.
Right? I agree. Because exactly where you were going with that, Kevin, the whole point of games is to have fun playing them.
Yeah, right.
And so if any of these unwritten rules...
Wait, I brought up having fun and you told me it was a dumb rule.
Yeah, I was being sarcastic.
Oh.
If any of these unwritten rules are detracting from that experience, you throw those unwritten rules out the window, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's all about the relationships you have. If Tyson comes to game night stinky, I'm still going to play a game with him.
Or late.
Right?
That means a lot.
Or late, then I'm still going to play a game with him. I still will enjoy it.
Bring some snacks every once in a while. I love that Mark is the M&M guy. He brings at minimum 3 different types, family size M&Ms. Bags of M&Ms to every game.
Now it's his thing. It's great.
It's awesome.
I think part of that though is contribute, right? Contribute to the game night in some fashion. If that's teaching the game and that's the way you're going to contribute, that's great. If that's hosting and having the table for people to play, that's great. If it's bringing snacks so people can get together and enjoy better, that's great. Contribute to game night in a way that makes the experience better.
So yeah, we sound kind of like board game snobs, but at the end of the day, it's about the people that you play with. So if anything that we've talked about gets in the way, it doesn't matter. It's about maintaining those relationships, having a good time when you're playing the game, getting to know new people, strengthening relationships that you already have. That's the most important thing at the end of the day. Even if, Tyson comes to board game night stinky or late, it doesn't matter, right?
The whole reason I think these are unwritten rules is because there's room for
forgiveness.
For forgiveness. There's wiggle room here, and they're not hard and fast rules. They're just the things that in most situation may be preferential, but also if they interrupt with how you're having fun, you throw them out.
So take these with a grain of salt, I guess is what we're saying.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up this episode. This has been a different style episode, and we've enjoyed talking about our unwritten rules. We'll get back to talking about more specific games in our next episode. But until then, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, and you can check out our BGG blog where we give more in-depth info on games that we've been playing that we may not talk about as fully on the podcast. And be sure to check our Board Game Geek Guild out at 3947. We're Guild 3947. And we also have a Board Game Arena group for the longest turn. So if you haven't checked that out and you like to play on Board Game Arena, come join that group and challenge us to some games and probably beat us in some games. So thanks again for listening.
Have fun.
Adios.
Keep the keys.
Goodbye.
Tot de volgende keer. Welcome to the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. This is episode 6, Unwritten Rules of Board Game Night. I said that weird.
Board Game Night.
Is it the 7?
No, it's episode 6.
You're right. Good.
We're talking about board games.
Board Game Night.
Hey, why don't you just drop your phone while I'm talking?
Okay.
Board game.
I'll pay you back.
Board Game Night.
Board games. We're just 3 board gamers.
Gams, yams, and you made a faux pas, right? So a faux pas.
Faux pas.
Faux pas. Let's play some board games.
Board games and faux pas.
Board games and faux pas. Our next
This
episode.
definitely is not going to be under 45 minutes.
Faux pas. You faux pas.
You can also check out our BGG blog where we give more in-depth rules. But
Yep. All right, this concludes our broadcast day. Click.